Hey, welcome to another edition of Influence Today with Chet Tart and Terry Lyles. How you doing, Terry? Good to see
Doing
you.
great, thank you. Good to see you again.
We talk about different things in our influence today, and we talk about influence. That seems to be a big topic. And we talk about things that influence our lives, our people, what we watch on TV, what we read, and the people we meet. And I call it the environment, which is stronger than really your free will at times. And
Mhm.
we have a guest that we're going to talk about. I mean, you talk about an influence. I ran across Christopher Lee Jones, who wrote a book about Mars mission. I don't, I can see that here. It's a phenomenal book about a trip to Mars, and it has to do with surviving the Kessler effect, which I want to get into a little bit. And it's about these guys that are on Mars and how they're going to leave Mars and come back. So, Christopher is an author and loves space, but really wasn't part of the Mars mission. You didn't land on Mars, did you, Chris? Welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Uh, Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, Chet and Terry. I appreciate the offer. Um,
Well, I'm glad you're here.
Yep.
yeah, the book is a totally fictional book, but it's all based on real world fact. Obviously, we've never had anybody land on Mars as of yet. So when I found out about the Kessler effect and what that could possibly mean to any mission or the International Space Station, or even us here on Earth with communications and satellites, I was like shocked, and I was like, I've always been a space fan. I never heard about the Kessler effect, so I decided to write the first book, and then last year I published the second edition of the first book, which has just got a lot more detail and information in it. But the whole point and purpose of the book is to get the information about the Kessler effect out to the world and let them know, this is a really dangerous situation, and it's getting more and more dangerous, literally on a daily basis.
Maybe you want to explain a little bit about the Kessler effect, because after meeting you and talking with you, it's second nature to me to understand what it is. But when I first met you, I didn't understand it. Maybe you want to go back a little bit for people who don't know what that is and who he is. There's a person named Kessler, correct?
Yes, I'll try and keep this as short as possible. In 1978, Donald Kessler came up with this theory that if we keep putting debris in low Earth orbit, eventually the debris is going to continue to circle around the Earth and hit satellites, which will create more debris. Just like when break the pool, break the when you hit the balls in a on a pool table, how they ping pong around the table and hit each other. That's kind of like what happened originally with the debris. And if you can imagine, every time a satellite gets hit, you don't create another piece of debris like you would in pool. You actually create hundreds to thousands of pieces of debris, and that continues to expand out, and it'll hit more and more satellites. And if you can imagine the snowball or chain reaction of this thousands of pieces being made continuously on a daily basis, eventually has so much debris that you can no longer leave the Earth or return from the Earth or from space. And so that's why I wrote the book. Is the first mission that goes to Mars. If the Kessler effect happens when they land there, they wouldn't be able to get back to Earth. So after Donald came out with Donald Kessler is a retired senior scientist and NASA director, and after he came out with the theory, all his scientist friends, of course, all ran home immediately, and were trying to prove that he was wrong, and they were all calling in over a period of time and saying, "Oh, yeah, you're right." So it created such a hubbub at NASA headquarters that his boss called him in, the director that he was working for, and he said, "I've heard so much crap about this Kessler effect, and it's causing everybody to get so distracted. I'm going to fire you if I hear anything more about this. This is ridiculous." The phone rang, and it was the Department of Defense on the phone, and he's like, "Hello," and they said, uh, "Yeah, this is Department of Defense. Is there a Donald Kessler there?" And he's like, "Okay, fine. You have your own division from now on. So you're gonna be a director of the Orbital Debris Office, NASA's Orbital Debris Office." So Donald is actually now retired director from NASA's Orbital Debris Office. So
Great.
it's been proven to be a fact.
Yeah. That's why sometimes what we think and say can threaten people because they're just afraid or don't understand. And I think that is, like you see, you talk about an influence, Chet, we don't always, sometimes our influence is positive and negative or negative, but it's never neutral. It always has some kind of an impact. It's gravity. It has to go somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
How did Kessler understand this? I mean, he was the first one, right? There must have been something that caught his attention.
Yes, good question. He actually had been on assignment. I don't think they expected him to come up with an answer. Turns out Donald was a mathematical genius, and his assignment was to see if he could come up with a mathematical formula that would correctly describe the bodies through the different meteor belts. So NASA was getting bored. The Americans were getting bored with Apollo missions going to the moon. So they're like, we've got to go to Mars to keep the American interest, keep people's interest, because we're tired of watching astronauts hit golf balls on the moon and whatnot, the things that they were doing. So they said, can you give us a mathematical formula for that would describe the activities of bodies in the different asteroid belts? And so he worked on that for a while, and he came back with an answer. And while they were reviewing his numbers and his calculations, he just started thinking to himself, I wonder what happens if we apply this same formula to debris, because we're creating a lot of debris. This is 1978.
Really? In 78?
Yeah,
Wow.
we're creating quite a bit of debris, and he was very forward looking, and he was like, let me apply this. And so he did, and he was shocked with the numbers. And as you can imagine, in 1978, we had very little debris, maybe a few thousand pieces of debris. And every single launch that we send up creates more debris. So he was totally shocked when he started putting slowly adding in more and more debris to his formulation. And the answer that he got was that eventually we would no longer be able to go to space or return from space. And he really didn't think about it at the time. We didn't have all that many satellites up. But what that also means is destruction of all satellites. So the knock-on effect is once all the satellites are destroyed, nobody's cell phone will work. All GPS will eventually be destroyed. And you're talking that this will happen in a period of like 90 minutes, because it takes 90 minutes to orbit the Earth for any satellite, at least in geostation. Let's see, that would be LEO and MEO orbits. So low Earth orbit and medium Earth orbit. So the ISS, the International Space Station, takes 90 minutes to circle the Earth. Every 90 minutes, they get a new sunrise. So anyway, all satellites would eventually be taken out, and that means there would be no GPS, there would be no radio or cell phone communication, pretty much, because now we all rely on that. All trading on Wall Street would stop. The internet would crash, and just imagine just losing your cell phone communication around the world, alone would be so disruptive to our current society. But the knock-on effect is just devastating. The more I looked into it, and I ended up becoming friends with Donald, and I would go up and consult with him from time to time and take him and his wife out to dinner. And they very much enjoyed that. And I would, of course, constantly pester him with questions. And he very much enjoyed that. So I've been taught by the best, educated by the best. So I'm very appreciative of him and his time, and I think he's kind of enjoyed it as well.
I think I could be corrected, but I think there's a little over 10,000 satellites in orbit right now, or maybe a little more. It's not, and it could be a lot more. Maybe we don't really know, but 10, 11, 12,000 satellites. Think about all of that potential. If you have that many balls on a pool table, how big is the pool table? So maybe you got a chapter called the pool table effect, because that's what I would see is like, what happens when all of these things start dispersing, like you said, it would shut down global activity and communications everywhere in the world.
Yes, absolutely. So, and that's, oh, geez. I just got a message on my phone that said, or on my iPad that says I'm in low power mode. So I'm going to try and plug it in real quick.
And see, it's already started. A
Yeah, exactly.
satellite's coming towards your house right now as we speak.
Let me ask you a question while you're doing that, Chris. How long will it take? Has there been any incidents now that space junk has hit into satellites or the space station or anything like that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, there is.
Yeah. I think Terry mentioned, or it was you, Chet, I can't remember who, but you said something about 10,000
Right,
satellites,
right.
which is probably a good ballpark. And
Yeah.
out of the 10,000, there's more than 5,000 defunct satellites. Now, it depends on who you talk to and who you
Yeah.
ask. But my understanding is that there's actually, I believe it's there. I believe there's more defunct satellites. In other words, satellites that are no longer working than
Right.
than actually. I think it's the other way around. It's like 5,000 satellites and like 10,000 are defunct, something like that. I mean, it's just ridiculous numbers,
Yeah,
But like,
in between Thanksgiving and Christmas, there was a phenomenon across the country. I saw it here in Florida at 5:45 in the morning one morning, driving my car, and it was a flame out. I thought it was a shooting star, and I've seen shooting stars before, but this was it would break off, it would burn, it'd break off, and it was just coming apart. And that's exactly what, and they confirmed on national, international news, that's what it was. So you
yes,
could Google that and look it up. So that was just, and I saw it live, and it was like, wow, I wonder what fell out of space.
yes, and it's happening more and more frequently. But fortunately, that's a good reentry where they burn up on reentry. That's what we
Mhm.
want to see. Um, what we don't want to see is where they're bouncing around and breaking up more into more and more pieces and hitting more and more satellites, creating more and more debris.
Yes.
Um, there's NASA has a orbital debris office, and all they do is print out stats and numbers and figures on what is going on in in space with orbital debris, but they don't do anything proactively like, okay, well, we really want to address this, so this is what we're going to do about it. That's not what they do. They just produce facts and figures and numbers. And in 2008, they actually said, okay, we can now um, distinctly say that the Kessler effect has started. And it's just
Wow.
very slow, but it started. So the first, if you will, pool balls are bouncing around the table, hitting each other, and more pool balls every single launch. And if anybody's been paying attention, our launch cadences around the world are just exponentially increasing. Last year,
Yeah. Hmm.
SpaceX said in 365 days, they launched like 325 launches last year. It's more than one every other day. So almost on a daily basis, they're launching more and more. Every time there's a stage separation, more debris is created. So
So remember my first question was, is there any pictures, is there any incidents of actual damage that
yeah,
has been done so far?
yeah.
Yeah. And where is that? Where's
There's a
that
couple
evidence?
of very specific incidences. One is the Hubble. When they went, I don't know if you remember, they had to
Yes.
upgrade the Hubble, and the astronauts that did that reported that the surface of the Hubble kind of looked like the surface of the moon, like looked like a lunarscape.
Wow.
Uh, and then now it's a new policy for any spacewalks. The astronauts are to do a glove check every 10 to 15 minutes to verify they don't have any cuts or scratches or tears in their gloves, because the surface of the International Space Station is so covered with what you call flash from being hit by debris moving at whatever 20,000 miles an hour, and you know causing damage to it. And now they have hooks they hook into as well, so they don't have to hang on to the station. They bring the hooks with them. And one of the more recent spacewalks, one of the astronauts came back inside through the equalization chamber, and he looked at his hook and he showed it to his partner, and there was a hole through the middle of the hook. So a piece of debris or a micrometeorite came through and hit his hook and went right through it, and he didn't even know it. And he said, if that had hit my suit or me, I'd be dead.
Yeah, you're gone. Yeah.
And he was holding on to it.
That's like walking with your feet on a super speedway on a NASCAR track, and they're doing 200 miles an hour, and you're just walking up and down the track hoping they don't hit you. I mean, that's pretty scary.
I'm expecting NASA to come up with, I mean, they have to do EVAs. They have to do spacewalks because they have to maintain the station until they decide to bring it down. They're constantly upgrading the heating system and the cooling system and radiators and stuff like that, and putting up new solar panels. The solar panels are all, pelted with damage from the debris. So, they have to replace them from time to time. So it's definitely a high priority for NASA. And there are a few different agencies now that have come out with concepts of how to do debris removal. And they're working, as fast as they can with the international space communities to try and see what we can do to, lower the amount of debris. The problem is there's also like rocket bodies, for example, that are in low Earth orbit and in medium Earth orbit. And they have a tendency to slowly break up over time on their own without even being hit. So in 1983, I think it was, the space shuttle, when they returned, the engineers did an evaluation of everything, of course, as they always did, and they decided they needed to replace the windshield because they had some damage to it. And when they looked at it, it was almost halfway through whatever hit it. So they were replacing the windshield, and Donald Kessler called them up at Kennedy Space Center and said, hey, what are you going to do with that windshield? And they said, we're just going to throw it away. And he said, can you send it to me, please? So he dug into it and found the damage that had gone almost halfway through the windshield was done by a fleck of paint.
Wow.
Wow.
That's strong. So if this happens and it continues, I would imagine there's two things I want to talk about. First of all, cleaning up the mess would be something that whoever invents it would be very wealthy, because that is something that needs to get done. And the second thing is, how do we prepare for something like this? If this happens and it blows out satellites, is there a way we can have backups on Earth here?
With all the research that I've done, I think the safest people in the world would be farmers that have solar panels and windmills. Because what happens is once in the 1980s, the United States had a really bad power outage in upper New York, and it went into Canada. And Congress passed a law that said that we have to have all power facilities have to be interconnected. So if one goes down, the other ones can easily step up and take up the slack. So now that they're all monitoring each other so they don't overproduce and send too much power to one or the other, if they all go offline at the same time because they lost the internet, they won't be able to produce power. They'll have to shut down. Otherwise, they risk damaging their extremely expensive turbines and power manufacturing equipment. So that would mean that we would no longer have any power either, on top of not having communication. So what eventually that means is your municipal facilities, such as your water production facilities and, of course, power like we're talking about, but also your backups are only good for about 3 days. Like here in South Florida, where I'm at, I was a firefighter in South Florida, and we only most of the municipal facilities, the water and so forth, they only have in the hospitals and police stations and fire stations, they only have fuel for about 3 days, maybe 5 at the most. So imagine how terrible it would be in the summer in Miami if we lost all communication, all power, and after 3 days, 4 days later, we lost water too. So, I mean, we can't transport, you can't pump fuel if you don't have power. You can't transport food if you don't have fuel, and you can't keep you can't turn, it's going to be a nightmare.
It's
Everybody's
it's the influence today's show is about apocalypse. It's like, oh wow, what do we take from this? Well, what do we do now? You live your best life today because all that stuff you're talking about is fascinating to me, and I think it is to Chet. The issue is it's out of our sphere of control. Like, what do we do? All we can do is react, and that could be a scary thing or a faithful thing, depending on what we believe.
yes.
Knowing your involvement, Chris, are you doing anything? Are you talking with certain people, research, NASA, on how to solve this issue? I mean, I think you have the issue, but how do anyone solving this? Are you a part of that?
Yeah, there are a couple companies that have been working on it. And I've been traveling to the International Astronautical Congress conventions around the world, doing research on this as well as researching my book. And I just got a patent done for what I call a passive orbital debris removal system, and I'm looking forward to moving forward and getting that. And what that is designed to do is remove debris in the 10 centimeters or less category. Um, and the other debris removal companies all have concepts of how to remove, like the big rocket bodies and defunct satellites and whatnot, that also are important to get removed. But nobody really has an idea as to how to remove debris at the smaller levels of debris at 10 centimeters or less. And 10 centimeters is still the size of a grapefruit. So orbital debris speeds are 17,500 miles an hour. So if you get hit by a grapefruit, even the softness of a grapefruit, you're done.
Yeah.
So it all has to be removed. And like I said, every single launch that we send up, we're creating more debris. And it's kind of unbelievable to me that SpaceX and United Launch Alliance and all the different um, launch agencies that are out there, European Space Agency and so forth, they've made it for the last 2 years. The number one priority is space, um, preserving space usability for future generations. And almost nobody's doing anything about it. None of the big corporations. So the big launch agencies. So, it's scary, and we have to address it now as soon
Hmm.
as possible.
Let's talk about this book for a second, Chris. You wrote it, it's a fictional story about going to Mars, but it seems to be dealing with the Kessler effect. When you put this book together, what was the mission that you wanted to get across? A story or the Kessler effect?
Yeah, no, the whole purpose and intent of the book was just to get the message out about the Kessler effect. The book probably should say the Kessler effect, mission to Mars, but that doesn't really get very much attention. People want to hear about the first mission to Mars and how it's going to happen. So
Okay.
that's the kind of the skeleton of the framework I worked within is the first mission to Mars, and then the Kessler effect kicks in, and will they be able to return from Mars? That's the general gist of the story. The second edition, which I just published in March of 2025, um, has a lot more data and detail in than the first book. So I really kind of got a little more into what life is going to be like on the Earth after the Kessler effect kicks in.
So the book really is disguised for, hey, we have a problem and that we should look into it. Is there any misconceptions people are walking away from the book after they read it?
Um, I've had a lot of reviews on Amazon,
Yeah.
and I don't have any. I've only had like one bad review, and the guy was saying, "Wait a minute, the story just suddenly stopped. I don't understand." And then he came back and said, "Oh, he's going to have another book that's going to follow this up. I understand now."
Okay. All
But
right.
Or the world ended and the second book didn't get finished.
he only gave me 3 stars, but then he went back and made it 4.
Okay, that's cool.
But I've had really good. It's got 4 point, I don't know, 4.5 or 4.8 stars on Amazon. So I get really good reviews. I work hard at trying to make it exciting and entertaining at the same time as educational.
Mhm.
Since you wrote the book and you're talking about the Kessler Effect, where have you been publicly so that people can see you besides podcast? And I know you did George Norrie's show. Has any Today Show, Tonight Show, anybody picked you up yet to start talking about this as a concern, even scientific journals?
Not really yet. It's kind of amazing to me that um, that it hasn't become more headline news. You know it's getting to be that way more in like I said, for 2 years in a row now, the International Astronautical Congress, the number one priority for the conventions was space sustainability. But when I walked around from booth to booth to booth, and trust me, the one in Milan, Italy, last year, whatever, 2 years ago, was 17,000 people in attendance. And I didn't find anybody that I thought had a decent answer to how to help reduce debris in low Earth orbit. And Leo, low Earth orbit, is right now the highest priority.
Right,
Uh,
I see that here. Yeah.
Well, one of the crazy things, Chris, Chet, I think too is, I do a lot of news cycling and stories on stress and pressure and disaster and so forth. There's so much information debris flying around in the media, they can't hear you right now. You know what I mean? It's kind of like we have our own ground level orbital debris field of information of everything going on. And it's hard to crack those codes. So we probably need to look into that at some point and see, how do you get to some of those factors and outlets and share some of this information? Maybe it's just to present the book. So just
yeah,
FYI.
the first book came out in 2020, and then the second edition came out in 2025. And I've been going to different, the National Space Society conventions, and I've been going to the International Astronautical Congress for the last 2 years, and I've been to the Mars. I'm a member of the Mars Society, and I keep, constantly going to these get-togethers to educate myself, number one, but
Mhm.
also find out what other people are doing. And even within the circles that you would expect people to be concerned about it,
Yes.
SpaceX,
Yeah.
for example, it's surprising that they're not more. It's not more of a high priority.
Right.
If you could force one global conversation to happen in the next few months, maybe 12 months, what would that be? What kind of conversations need to take place in the world, not just our country?
You know, it's I be in the up until the recent administration, we've had national and international accords with other countries, um, with European Space Agency and Australian Space Agency and JAXA, the Japanese Space Agency, and whatnot. And we've all had these agreements that we would do this and follow these procedures. We would not do, different things. For example, put weapons in space. We were not going to weaponize space until 5 years, 6 years ago. So before the invention of Space Force, so or the creation of Space Force. So it seems to me that nobody anymore cares or is interested in international accords because it's just a volunteer thing anyway. What's going to have to happen is these international space agencies are going to have to realize, look, it's our future as a space agency to maintain our existence, to do so, to take responsibility for the garbage we're leaving behind. And that's just, they're going to have to just pick that up. I mean, I don't know, back in the 60s and what we had, the flower children and whatnot, and everybody complained about garbage alongside the highways. And it took quite a few years to get people to, sponsor roads and highways and help keep them clean. And they seem to be doing a lot better now than they did in the 70s and whatnot. So it took a while. This is going to have to be
Wow.
either we're going to have some kind of an explosion to bring attention to it, which unfortunately, could easily happen with the amount of debris we have flying around the Earth right now. Or we're just going to have like a bunch of different international space agencies get together and say, okay, this is a priority for every launch from now on. We're going to do something about removing debris. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to, sign a contract with each other that we will do this and take the responsibility upon ourselves to protect our own highways, our own ways, our own low Earth orbit, and our own way to leave the Earth and return from space. I mean, you're out of business if you even if it is just something the size of a marble moving at 18,000 miles an hour, you're done.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a bullet beyond a bullet.
Faster than a bullet.
Goes right through you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
Chris, I want to thank you for this a very educational conversation. I would imagine that people listening to this are not even aware of it. And if they get the book, read it, they will understand. It's a fictional book, but at the same time, you're getting a message across here. Yeah.
That's the whole point. From the very first book.
So are a lot of Hollywood movies. I mean, they make these fictional movies, and then before long, it starts happening. The AI movies back years ago with Will Smith and robots running around, and we watch it go like, that's cool. But no, it's like, no, it's happening. So you know what? You're on the front end of something that's already happening. It's just bringing the awareness to it. And that's what we love about what we talk about what influences us. This influences the entire planet.
Yeah, I mean, I was just a retired firefighter, and I just found out about what the Kessler effect would mean to our space futures, our collective, as far as even the whole Earth goes, our future in space. And I was so shocked, here's this retired firefighter is like, the world needs to know about this. This is really, 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 really bad. How do I get the message out? I can't call the newspaper; they don't care. I can't get on TV; they don't care. I'm just going to have to write a book. That's all I can. That's the only way I can think about getting the message out to the world that we can't keep doing this if we're going to have a spacefaring future, and not lose a whole lot of mankind in the meantime. Because
I guess the obvious question as we close up is, how do people get the book? What's the best way to access your book and to reach out to you?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Well, the best way to access the book is on Amazon. It's very easy. Mars Mission 1: Surviving the Kessler Effect. I can always be reached at chris@christopherleejones.com. That's my email address. You can always go to my website, christopherleejones.com. And there you can leave messages there. You can click on the website if you just want to review and see what the book's about, or Amazon has wonderful with all their reviews. I'm very, very pleased with the results I've had on the reviews on Amazon. So right now, that's the best thing. I'm still traveling, and like I said, this new patent that I just have got patented for small debris removal. I'm hoping that might have maybe a positive influence on our low Earth orbit debris accumulation.
Great.
Thank you, Chris. I think what we're going to also try to help you out is get a movie made, because I think that will definitely bring attention, especially to this and to the issues of the Kessler effect.
Well, it's certainly got some exciting scenes.
Yeah. I want to thank you for being on the show today. I appreciate you being on Influence Today. If you're listening and you like it, please share with your friends. Also, please give us some feedback and comments. And if you're interested more in the Kessler effect and Mars Mission 1, let us know also, and we'll pass that information along to Christopher. Thanks, Christopher, for being our guest today. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Chet and Terry. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Terry, for being with us. And thanks for listening to Influence Today.